Hello everyone, my name is PJ and welcome back to The Void and the first ever VOIDCAST featuring my best friend Tyler.
Hello.
You probably remember him from my other channel. We used to do Let's Plays all the time together.
But I'm here now.
Yep. Something I didn't mention in my I'm Back video when I mentioned buying a house, I didn't buy it alone. Here's my co-signer and roommate.
I had to help out. And plus, I've always wanted to live with PJ anyway. So.
Yeah, we split all the bills 50-50. Like, I take care of the bills, and then I record how much Tyler owes me. Only thing really that I ask from him in return is that he does the dishes, because I hate doing dishes.
Honestly, with today's economy, I'm sure you all live in the same economy we do. Paying for anything by yourself anymore is just hard. I mean, we lucked out with this house price-wise, but it's just fantastic we have this opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, even with all the bills that we have to pay, and the electricians and the plumbers, and we even found a guy to mow our lawn for us, we can still afford shit like $100 cameras and all the unnecessary fucking Dungeons and Dragons books that we want.
And soon to be even more of them, because now we're really, really kind of heavy into D&D right now.
Super into D&D. I almost bought a reprint of a book, a supplemental lore book, for an edition that I do not know the rules to today for $20. I'm glad I resisted the temptation, but it'll probably still end up in my inventory someday anyway.
Yeah, typically you've been focusing more on 5e and studying mechanics for that. My personal interests are more just looking into rules for different games, and I have a large collection. Well, I guess not as large as his. Of different games. I've got Pathfinder, and I've got Legend of the Five Rings, and Call of Cthulhu, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm interested in playing Call of Cthulhu at some point, and I also want to try both editions of Pathfinder. But it's not just 5th edition that I'm into.
Well, all D&D.
Yeah, all D&D. Like, I have the core rulebooks for 3.5. This is an original premium edition of the book. I also have reprints of the Dungeon Master's Guide and Monster Manual and the Rules Compendium.
Yeah, so specifically though, like, what are you reading like right now, D&D wise?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I am reading How to Defend Your Lair by Keith Amon. It's his 4th book in the Monsters Know series. If you've never been to themonstersknow.com, it's a fantastic blog that talks about NPCs and their combat tactics and their actual survival instincts. Like, it's trying to hammer in to newbie DMs the world over that monsters are not just a pile of stat blocks for you to throw at your players. They're living, thinking beings that exist in the world, and when they get low on hit points, they're going to run away.
Yeah, because again, as we've been playing D&D for going on 12 years now. I mean, we
13.
did it 13. We had a long gap. We started with 4th edition. That was our beginning part with all of our friends. Very similar to Puffin Forest. If you guys watched that, he started with 4th edition as well.
Yeah, if you ever watched Puffin Forest's video talking about his first experiences with 4th edition, it's pretty much one-to-one what we went through.
Mm-hmm.
Except none of us played as a war priest, so we still got to pick powers.
Yeah, it's 4th edition, people have their complaints about it. We had our fun. I mean, back then, we pretty much followed every single trope you could imagine starting D&D players. We made worlds and pre-existing stuff because we wanted to so badly.
Yeah, I'm going to do a recap of our 5-year 4th edition campaign. It was a train wreck, and there was a lot of drama here and there too, but we actually managed to finish it, which is weird considering how long it took.
I mean, we had to rush through some stuff in the end, but we still had a through line. Like, we still had a big climactic ending, and every character got their own moment. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Every character got a satisfactory ending.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, this is also newbie DM PJ that was running pretty much the entire thing, except for the few moments where Kaze ran a couple of the adventures. And I didn't kill off a single PC.
But I think most of that was just 4th edition's balance, though. I mean, we went to very high level, and...
Well, we went to max level.
Yeah.
I mean, because stupid me, new to D&D thought that that's how you played D&D, was you got to max level and then you fought the final boss. I mean, why else is there a max level?
But even see, the thing is, again, newbie stuff. It's not like you have to get the max level in games, like in video games, because that's of course most of our impact was from video games going into D&D.
Well, that was most of 4th edition's impact, was video games.
Right, but you know what video game has you get to max level to fight anything but the super boss?
Does Sans count as the super boss?
I mean, you don't even have to be any. I mean, you can beat Sans without ever taking a hit.
No, but you do have to get to max level in order to fight him.
I suppose so.
Well, almost max level. You reach level 20 for beating him. You're level 19 when you fight him.
All right. Either way, 4th edition, that's where we started, and we've evolved since then. We've played a little bit of 1st edition at one point. Specifically, what version of that was that? It was
Osric.
Osric, which I don't even know I still don't know what Osric really is.
I'm not even sure if it's really 1st edition. Which means we probably still haven't played 1st edition. But we're gonna.
Yeah.
There are reprints for the core rulebooks available on DMsguild.com. And I'm gonna get them. Mm-hmm. But not until I've experienced 3.5 a bit more.
Right. Because 3.5 is cool. We've been interested in that recently too, and we've went through a little bit of it. We're doing a little test campaign with one of our friends from Kentucky. That's gonna be fun.
Kaze. Like, they know Kaze. I mean, those of them who've seen on my other channel know Kaze.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's enough reminiscing. We actually do have some specific topics that we want to talk about today, all of them about D&D. Mm-hmm. The first one I wanted to talk about was alignment. I know alignment has been a hot topic in D&D pretty much since 3.5 came out. Like, players seem to have this idea in their head that alignment restricts the personalities that they can make for their characters or their actions, and that it should be taken out of the game. And they've convinced Wizards of the Coast of the same thing, and now they've slowly been writing it out of the game too. And I'm here to tell you that alignment is still super important, and it needs to be re-implemented in the way it was intended. Not the way Gygax intended, not with like alignment languages or anything, but just because of the way D&D's world works. At least the way it works now. I am specifically omitting 1st and 2nd edition from this and just focusing on how the world has worked since D&D 3rd edition. 3rd edition D&D is basically just like 3rd generation Pokemon. Like,
yeah, it was a big shift for the company after 2nd edition's less than positive impact, I would say.
Yeah, D&D has a very specific mantra to it ever since 3rd edition was made, that it's been following ever since, even with 4th edition. So excluding 1st and 2nd, alignment as it exists in D&D, as it's supposed to exist, is not supposed to be a measure of a character's personality. Because you think about it, there's only 9 alignments. How many personalities can you think of? Every single personality that you can think of fits into one of those 9 alignments, whether you agree with the alignment it fits into or not. Because evil and good and law and chaos in D&D, not in any other fantasy setting, in D&D, they are objective. Good and evil are real. They are tangible energies that make up the universe.
Forces that are used by beings outside the control of mortals.
Used by, and also, they're created by them too. Like,
I mean, it's more than just gods too. The entire outer planes are dictated by alignment. That dictates how many there are, where they stand between like the northern, around the edge of the mortal plane.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. The cosmology of D&D's multiverse is comprised entirely of planes that represent extremes. Like, think of anything you can imagine. Think of a concept, think of an element. There exists a plane where that thing is amped up to the maximum degree. And with a material plane, which is the only truly neutral plane in the cosmology, is a melting pot of all those things. And all those things actually seem to come from those other planes. Fire comes from the plane of fire. Evil comes from the planes of evil. And then there's also these hemisphere planes that surround the entire cosmology, one for positive energy and one for negative energy, which determine healing and radiant and necrotic and undeath, respectively.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't really talk about positive or negative energy in 5th edition, even though the player's handbook still has them mentioned in the back where it shows the map of the Great Wheel. Okay, well, it's actually on a separate chart, but here you go, right here. I'm going to put up a better image on screen for you. You got... Why is it so blue? Yeah, so you got the positive plane on the top and the negative plane on the bottom, but it doesn't really talk about it, except in this little sidebar, which says that radiant and necrotic energy comes from them. And that's basically it. It doesn't tell you anything about what lives there. Almost nothing lives there, by the way. The planes are inhospitable.
And there's at least a few things that live there, right?
Yeah, but they need magic to do it.
Right, because if you go to the positive energy plane, you'll basically just be burned with radiance. And if you go to the negative energy plane, you'll be, I don't even know how to describe it, like just torn apart by negative energy.
You decay pretty much instantly.
Right.
Because that's what necrosis is decay.
But the point we're trying to get to here is, like he said, all of this stuff, it comes from places and fuses together on the prime material plane. Well, I guess just the material plane in general.
Now that we've established what good, evil, law, and chaos are, that they are energies that exist in this fantasy setting, people are still asking, why does that matter? So you've got law, evil, chaos, and good. They're energies, so are elements. Alright, but the existence of elements doesn't determine my personality. And I would argue that yes, they absolutely do. Especially if you're a creature that needs warmth and water. They do. Like, imagine for one moment, I dare you. If you're a DM, I dare you to run a campaign in D&D in an original world in which water does not exist. So you can't have flesh, you can't have blood. The only playable races will be like earth elementals and constructs and stuff. You can't have oozes, you can't have rain. Air would just be pure oxygen, which means you can't even have fire either, or else the entire world would just explode.
But none of that really has to do with alignment, though. I mean...
It does in this case, though. If you can have a fantasy world...
Oh, okay, so you're using this kind of as a metaphor to explain, like, why you need to have the ranges of, like, good, evil, law, and chaos? Is that what you're trying to say?
Right.
Got you. So if you take out law, then what are you left with? Just a world of pure chaos, basically. Because, the opposite without the other.
Yeah, because the thing is, in any other fantasy setting, one might say, if you take away law, then you don't have chaos anymore either. Because, yin-yang dichotomy, how can you have one without the other? How can you have ones without zeros? But that's not how it works in D&D. The forces of the cosmos are always working to strive toward a balance of these energies. Because if it is actually possible, and there are things in the Dungeon Master's Guide, like, for example, okay, so there are 2 artifacts that have existed in D&D for a long time. The Book of Exalted Deeds and the Book of Vile Darkness, which are basically considered to be the penultimate magic items for the forces of good and evil. And both of them have similar prerequisites for destroying them. The Book of Exalted Deeds says that it cannot be destroyed as long as good exists in the multiverse. That means there exists a possible state in which there is no good in the multiverse. And then the Book of Exalted Deeds can be destroyed. Similarly, the Book of Vile Darkness, will turn to dust and be forever destroyed if all evil in the multiverse is wiped out. Those are things that can happen. There are rules for what happens if all good or all evil is destroyed.
I mean, that's never actually happened, though, right?
It can happen if a DM decides that he wants to write an adventure like that, or if a PC manages to get an exceptionally powerful wish spell off.
Maybe. There have to be some caveats to that, though.
Oh, definitely. But real quick, I want to find a quote, actually, from the character Asmodeus, who is the ruler of the 9 hells and basically the poster man of lawful evil in the multiverse. He said, "I have heard it said evil is nothing more than good's absence, as if evil was the darkness to good's light. A comforting thought, I imagine, for those seeking redemption. But I tell you, put such thoughts from your mind. You need only peer into a demon's eyes to know evil is not some vacuum waiting for virtue to come and fill its emptiness. Evil is a force. It is an influence in the cosmos, an agency equal to or perhaps even greater than its antithesis. There are 2 sides in this eternal struggle, one light and the other dark. You might find evil's works reprehensible, yet to those whose hearts belong to corruption, good deeds are equally deplorable. Understand, there is no redemption, only treason against the side you were born to serve."
And all that is basically just in reference to, well, again, he is a demon.
He's a devil.
He's a devil, right? And that's just kind of how things operate in the 9 hells. If I'm not, because most of it is evil, right?
That's how things operate in pretty much all of the lower planes. Because if you look in the monster manual, you'll find that a lot of creatures just say that they are lawful evil, or they are chaotic evil. They're fixing a lot of that, starting with Monsters of the Multiverse, and then going into 1D&D. Like, a lot of the time you'll find an orc in the book, and instead of saying chaotic evil, it'll say usually chaotic evil. Because, orcs are a playable race, and they do have free will, just they're usually driven to evil by their evil gods. Like, they're forced to do it.
And that's the thing, is that even if evil and good are intrinsic forces of the universe, and that's what kind of exists and the reason they're for, does not mean that there are evil creatures that are incapable of doing good deeds, or that there are tons of examples of evil creatures, or at least typically evil creatures, like kobolds, for example, and goblins, that can be heroes. And
they're both playable races.
Yeah, well, playable races or not, anything can be playable if you try hard enough.
Well, yeah. And even the Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition, or was it the Monster Manual? I forget. It doesn't matter, because I was just reading them earlier today, and one of them specifically says, and I'll even put it up on screen so you know I'm not lying about this, that it is perfectly within the DM's right to have a good-aligned green dragon, or some such. You can change the rules of the game, but we're not here talking about DM creativity. We're talking about the world of D&D.
Right. I'm not trying to sit here and say like everything you're saying isn't valid, because I believe everything you say, because I agree with it. I agree that good and evil and law and chaos should be intrinsic parts of their universe. I'm just making the statement that, yeah, there could be a good green dragon. Like, one, maybe, is what I'm saying. Like, but a majority of them are not going to be like that, because it does not serve the purpose of where they came from, their origins. They are mostly evil.
Well, technically speaking, green dragon is a poor example, because green dragons aren't forced to be evil. It's just typically part of their nature.
But there are creatures that are forced to be evil. Orcs are a fantastic example of that. Okay, not really forced, but...
No. Orcs and green dragons are still in the same boat. Like, they're both influenced.
What's a better example, then?
A better example of something that the DMG or Master Manual consider DMs can break the rules for?
Mm-hmm.
Devils.
Right.
Because devils are intrinsically tied to the plane of lawful evil. They are permanently and unquestionably lawful evil. They don't have free will. And even if you make the argument that they do have free will, they are using that free will and choosing to be lawful evil at all times. A devil that ceases to be lawful evil ceases to be a devil.
Do they become something else, or do they just disappear?
I'm not sure, because I don't know of any examples of a devil turning good.
I mean, what if you used like a spell to change their alignment?
I mean, those exist, but I'm not sure what would happen. I mean, just like demons are always chaotic evil, and Slotty are always chaotic neutral, and Yugoloths and hags, I don't know about all hags, but Yugoloths definitely are always neutral evil. Modrons, at least the non-rogue Modrons, are always lawful neutral. Angels are always lawful good. Pegasi are always chaotic good, because they're the main chaotic good representatives. And a creature that still isn't in 5th edition yet, but hopefully they'll be added back in the Planescape books coming out, are the Gardenals, who are always neutral good. So those are the 8 extreme races that represent the 8 extreme alignments.
So at the very least, those have to remain within their alignment dichotomy.
Pretty much, because they're living representations of those alignments. Which is why devils value nightmares so much. They love the idea of taking a Pegasus as the opposite alignment of them and turning it into a fiend and using it as a mount.
I didn't know that was the origin of nightmares.
Now, that's what a nightmare is. It's a Pegasus with its wings ripped off.
And it just becomes a nightmare.
And then infused with evil.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So there is more to it than just ripping its wings off.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And angels, too. The most famous example of which is the solar Zerial, who was fighting a war in the Nine Hells, and Asmodeus comes up to her and says, "You are a wonderful warrior, Zerial. Why don't you join me in my army, and then you can use my resources to fight as many demons as you like and cleanse the world of their ilk." And he's so charismatic, like literally only one character in all of D&D's lore has ever resisted Asmodeus' charisma. She agrees, and she gets tainted by the Nine Hells and becomes an archdevil.
But he didn't technically lie.
He didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Asmodeus really doesn't lie that much.
Oh, he totally does. He's called the Prince of Lies for a reason.
Oh, okay.
But then again, so are lots of gods. I mean, I think, who was it? Was it Frez Urblu was also known as the Prince of Lies? Maybe the Demon Prince of Lies? I don't know. But yeah, so we've discussed why alignment is an important part of the Omniverse, and yet still there are people who probably think that it needs to be left out of their games, or at least left off of a player's character sheet.
But most of the time, the people's who want to do that it's just a matter of because they feel limited by it. And that's not necessarily has to be the case.
No, in fact, I have already come up with a great example for a thought exercise. Think of a character that you want to play as in D&D. Give them a gender, a race, a class, a background, give them a family, give them flaws, ideals, personality, traits, bonds, all that stuff. Give them a few like prejudices here and there, give them some hobbies, some favorite foods, some least favorite foods. Completely flesh them out. Okay? You've got a complete character. Now, what alignment are they? Doesn't matter, because chances are your character doesn't know themselves. Just like you can't know your own height and weight without some kind of tool to measure it, at best your character can only guess what alignment they are. So when they find a legendary magic item that can only be wielded by good aligned creatures, and it doesn't work for them, it may come as a shock. It may think to themselves, "Oh, I guess I'm not as good as I thought I was. Maybe I need to try harder." Or they might not care. So alignment is not a restriction. It's just a label that can be applied to any character. Except animals with 2 or less intelligence. They are always unaligned.
It doesn't change the fact, though, that when you're making a character, they do have a spot to put it in there. So when you're making one, what's some advice you would say that you should put in there when you're first starting out? Then, for those who want to who still want to use it.
Well, I always just use the same 2-question system for determining character alignments. For Law and Chaos, does your character want to live in a society that is governed by strict rules and regulations, or do they want to be free and do what they want regardless of the consequences? And then for Good and Evil, does your character do selfless acts all the time and without expecting payment, or do they do selfish acts all the time, not caring who they hurt as long as they get what they want? And if you don't, agree with either of those ultimatums, then you just fall in the neutral axis on both of them. Mm-hmm. Like 2 questions that'll determine what your alignment is out of 9 possible options.
And this kind of ties in a little bit when, as I mentioned, I do study other systems a lot. And when I was doing research on the first edition of D&D and Advanced, that's when I learned, and this actually spawned with OD&D, the origins of alignment in the first place. And the very first form of alignment from OD&D was not a nine block system. It was instead just 3, which is just lawful, neutral, or chaotic. And its entire purpose was just to really establish what side of a conflict you were on. The creatures outside of society, chaotic. Creatures in society, lawful. And that's how you determine why the orcs and goblins are fighting the nobles. Because again, D&D originated as a war game, played with little pewter figurines on a table. And apparently some people played by mail, which I still can't believe. It's a Dave Arneson thing. If you look it up, he actually played D&D by mail. Specifically his game, Blackmore. Darkmore? Blackmore? Blackmore.
I think it was Blackmore, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is in an era that had telephones.
Right.
Just use telephones.
Right.
I mean, before I even knew what D&D was, I was playing makeshift JRPGs over the phone with Kaze. We would track his hit points in a notebook. And I would ask him what his characters do. It's interesting that those are the only 3 alignments that existed back then, because these days you have a lot of lawful creatures that don't live in society, like goblins and hobgoblins.
That's the precise reason why Gary decided to expand it, because he realized the limitations of just having that system. And during some of the books, they even established it more. Like, now we have lawful good, right? But there were actually some stuff, I think it's for like 3.5 and stuff like that. It might even be for 3, I'm not really sure. That actually lists listings for things that are like lawful good lawful. Or, so yeah, like...
the in-between alignments.
Yeah.
That's another thing I want to talk about real quick, is I have actually seen people try to expand the alignment grid to have in-between alignments. You don't need to do that. Just look at the cosmology. There are 16 outer planes, not 8. There's already representations of in-between alignments.
Right.
You can be lawful good, or lawful evil, or chaotic evil, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. And there's also another neutral plane besides the material plane, but it takes neutrality to the extreme, the Outlands, which has portals to all of the other outer planes, and a city in the center called Sigil, where magic doesn't work, and you basically can't attack anybody.
Yep.
It's a true neutral zone. So it still takes away free will. Like, pretty much every plane in the multiverse saps your free will in some way, except for the material plane, which is why everyone else wants to take it over. And Asmodeus makes a good point about the forces of good and evil fighting each other. Evil wants to take over the world. Yes, they do. You know who else wants to take over the world? Good.
Mm-hmm.
Angels want to wipe out all evil.
Mm-hmm.
The Slotty want to just impregnate everybody. They're not fighting in the name of chaos. They just are. They're just chaotic. They just do whatever. And Modrons, specifically their leader,
Primus.
Mm-hmm. He wants to fill the world with law. He wants to make everything calculated and perfect.
Speaking of which, please please stat the rest of the Modrons.
I think they are.
Are they?
Because
Okay,
I was reading the description for the Planescape books, and it mentioned Hierarch Modrons.
Please, just do it already. We've been waiting forever. I mean, if it's not clear, I mean, Mechanist is like our favorite place. Me and him love Mechanist. It's so great.
We still haven't played an adventure there.
No, it doesn't matter. The fact is, the concept, the world, the looks, everything it does is so cool. I love it. And the Modrons, the little fucking minion fuckers that they are the best thing ever. They're just great. I love them.
They're so cute.
Yeah.
I know some people think they're ugly, but they're still cute.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like they're an ugly kind of cute, like pugs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, and that brings me to another thing. So you already know why your players can still have alignments, even if they don't necessarily agree with what good, evil, law, and chaos represent in this world. The only reason your players are arguing about it is because they have their own opinions on what's good and what's evil, and, they're special little snowflakes who think that necromancy shouldn't be considered evil, except that in this world, it objectively is, so get over it. If you don't want necromancy to be evil, play in a different setting. But also, because, as I mentioned, there are legendary magic items in the Dungeon Master's Guide, specifically 9 of them that originated in Greyhawk, all of which have a different alignment. And they can only be wielded or attuned to by someone with a matching alignment. And there are also other magic items with alignment restrictions, but for some reason the lowest tier 1 is very rare, and there's only one of them, and it's from Wild Beyond the Witchlight. The rest of them are legendary, and one of them is an artifact. They are not doing enough with alignment restrictions. In older editions, you had Detect Evil, Detect Good, Detect Law, Detect Chaos, and also Destroy and Protect from variations of all 4 of those. In D&D 5th edition, you have the spell Protection from Evil and Good, which should be called Protection from Outsiders. Because it's protecting you from all... It's not even protecting you from all evil or all good. It's literally just protecting you from types, like Fae, which could be either, or Celestials, or Fiends, or Elementals, and I think Oozes. I forget, but it's stupid.
Yeah, there really isn't much in the way of, like, alignment-specific spells anymore. I mean, Protection from Good and Evil, as corrupted as it is that the closest you get?
And 3.5 incorporated alignment into its core rules. Like, in 5th edition, alignment doesn't come up until you're getting legendary magic items. But in 3.5, it determined what class you could be. And if you're a cleric, even if you play as a neutral aligned cleric, you still have to pick whether you're fighting in the name of good or evil. And that will determine whether or not you get turn undead or rebuke undead.
That's a fantastic thing. I'm glad that over the production of D&D, they did actually expand both paladins and clerics that allowed them to be any alignment. That was super cool. I'm glad they didn't keep them just being lawful the whole time. Because it makes perfect sense why there would be, if there's gods of every alignment, why wouldn't there be paladins and clerics of any alignment? I'm surprised it took them that long to do, because that started in 3.5. So it's crazy they took that long. Oh, more Garyisms for you. Gygaxisms, I guess.
I think either could work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I also did a teeny bit of math because I was interested in how 5th edition treats the population of its world in terms of how many people have which alignments. Now, in 3.5's Dungeon Master's Guide, there's a very simple chart that you use for randomly determining NPCs, and there's a very simple chart for determining their alignment. 50% of all D&D 3.5 NPCs are evil. Like, half of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, half of all the creatures who have an alignment are evil.
And why would you say that is?
I'd say it's because not only are there a large number of creatures in the world who are being forced into evil by their respective gods or by their very nature, but also simply because evil is, by its own nature, easier than good.
Also, the D&D world kind of sucks.
Yeah, the D&D world is just designed to kill anyone who lives in it.
So it kind of makes sense why some people would resort to just evil shit. I mean, the world is full of like thousands of dungeons full of evil necromancers and shit. I mean, do you think the random peasant's gonna really care about standing up for the right thing? I don't think most of them do.
No.
I mean, they barely make any money. I mean, at least if they go and join up with a necromancer, they have the chance.
I mean, that's why adventurers exist. Because trying to make a living in towns, getting 2 silver pieces a day, it's not going to cut it. I mean, that's the bare minimum you need in order to survive, and you're still not living. I think you are, actually. I think the lifestyle expenses are different in 3.5, but still, it's not enough. If you want to really make a living, you got to go out there, risk your life, kill a dragon, and take its treasure.
Right, and I'm just reminded again, early D&D days. Back then, money was experience. 1 gold was equal to 1 experience point. You were the titular murder hobo. You wanted that gold. You wanted that money. You didn't have a character. No one. You didn't have an alignment. Fuck. Your alignment is greedy. That's what the fuck it was. At least nowadays we have at least we're allowed to have characters with backstories and lore and care,
And characters that don't care about money, which
Right.
there is a surprisingly large amount of.
Right. Because no one really wants to, I don't know that many people who actually care that much about playing the greedy guy who wants the money, unless it's like for a very specific joke or trope.
Well, the idea is that you want money so that you can get more powerful and get more money as a result. Like you want to buy magic items, buy a stronghold, hire hirelings and mounts.
It's just so funny because like back in the day in first edition ODD, why did money give you experience? And there's really no explanation for that outside of just, again, Gary wanted people to be poor. That's kind of why. That's why most of the time when you went back to the town, they would just tax you to no end and take all your money away. Just so you could scrounge for your next ration as you go between towns fighting fucking rats. Like, that's what it was. You weren't doing Game of Thrones fucking house warfare.
Yeah, but even if you don't have the, the chosen one-ishness to become an adventurer, then your next best options were to become a bandit, which there are a fuck ton of bandits,
right?
Or join a cult. They'll take care of you.
Yeah, I mean, they will, actually. And, yeah, bandits, too. Like, you get one, like, will you take out one merchant cart? And it's going to have, 20 gold at least on that cart? There you go. You're good. You're covered.
I think they would have more than that.
I'm just giving a rough estimate. I mean, how much do merchants usually carry?
A low-level merchant would probably have about 1,000 gold.
That's that's like 10 years of peasant money.
Yeah.
And again, that's an issue that we should probably have thought about talking about this before. Money's fucked in D&D's world. It really is. Like, the amount that everyone gets is just so out of whack with each other. Yeah, because you go out, you're an adventurer, right? You go to your first dungeon. You're expected to have, 4 hordes by the time you get to, level 2 or something like that. Isn't that...
No. 2 hordes by the time you reach level 2. 7 hordes by the time you reach level 4.
Right.
Or 5, actually.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of shit. And then you're going to go back to town. Like, the minute you get your first 1,000 gold, pretty much any shit in town is just worthless to you. Like, outside of buying magic items, inns, just throw them 10 gold. And you know what? Maybe thinking about it, maybe that's why inns still exist. They might actually support themselves entirely on adventurer income. Merchant, yeah, actually that makes perfect sense. Because the adventurers are going around, they're throwing fucking 100 gold at the fucking innkeeper every single time.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No. Mainly just because 3.5 actually does have some rules that recommend the DMs actually make that kind of behavior have economic repercussions.
Okay.
Yeah, inns need to be self-sustainable without the intervention of adventurers. But we're not talking about gold. We're not talking about the economy. That can be a different video.
Okay.
I want to talk about crafting at some point.
Yes, we'll get to that.
But I made this little table here. I did some math earlier with the help of anydice.com. So I mentioned that 3.5 had a chart for determining random NPC alignments. 5th edition has a similar chart. It actually has 3, but one of those is for dungeon creators. The one that I'm using is from Xanathar's. It's for determining the random alignment of the people from your backstory. Your friends, your family, your co-workers, your employer, allies, enemies, rivals, whatever. And there's a chart. It's a 3d6 chart. You roll it and you determine what their alignment is randomly. Now I figure that chart probably determines the percentage likelihood of any given person in your life being that alignment. So I did the math. There is a 0.23% chance of them being chaotic evil. That, along with chaotic good, for some reason, you'd think there'd be a lot more chaotic good, are tied for the lowest alignments in the entire world. The lowest likely alignments. So that's every 1 in 250 people on average is either chaotic evil or chaotic good.
I mean, that sort of makes sense. I mean, if there was a lot of chaotic evil people, it would be very hard for society to sustain itself at all. You know? I mean, because that's the thing about chaotic evil individuals is it's hard to run a society or a group of people when you're only in it for yourself. That's hard.
I mean, orcs seem to function just fine being chaotic evil.
I suppose, but they also are they're all aligned under a singular banner. You know what I mean? It's kind of a different case for them. It's not like they're just... I mean, they are out for themselves, I guess, but... Well, actually, they kind of aren't, because they're all fighting for Groomsh. Right?
Yeah.
But there are different bands of orcs. So what do the different bands serve? Like, why do they have different bands at all?
There is an orcish pantheon. It's more than just Groomsh, it's also his family. Like his wife and his battle buddies.
So it's about which ones they worship in different capacities.
Yeah, like Groomsh is the leader, and then there's also Ilneval, and I think Shargos is one of them. Yurtris is another. I don't remember all of them, because Groomsh is typically the one that just comes up the most. Like Gorl Glittergold is the leader of the gnome pantheon. There are other gnome gods, but nobody really knows them.
Mm. Yeah, Garl's the later we talk about.
Yeah, but twice as many people as chaotic evil and chaotic good are chaotic neutral. So in total, the number of chaotic people in the world is less than 1%. An entire axis, only 1%.
Well, okay, we have to keep in mind here that number is only relevant to playable races as of right now.
Yes.
So we have to keep that in mind.
But there's a lot of playable races, and that includes humans.
Yeah, yes, I completely agree with that. But it does make sense why there'd be a lot of... Well, maybe that still doesn't make much sense. Because there's definitely more than that. Do you think they're just afraid to call things evil anymore?
I doubt it. Because lawful evil makes up over 4% of those people. Chaotic evil is still just 0.23%, like I said. So that's chaotic evil and lawful evil. And then you have neutral evil, which is over 21%.
So why is neutral evil so much more common?
Yeah, neutral evil is tied with neutral good for the second most common alignment.
So selfish and doesn't stand for organized like society. Interesting. I would think lawful evil would be more common than... Well, because basically, lawful evil means you have a code, right? That you follow, typically?
Well, if we're looking at just law, you've got lawful evil, which is about 4%. Lawful good is only a little teeny bit over 2%, and same for lawful neutral, for a total of a little bit over 4% of all people are lawful.
So a majority are still within that neutral category. Lawful, neutral, and neutral evil.
Yeah, so with the big percentage of neutral evil people, plus lawful evil and chaotic evil, that's almost 26% of all people are evil, making it the most common of the 4 axes.
Which still, is pretty similar to what it was in 3.5.
Yeah, and then good is almost 22%. And then if you take all 5 of the neutral alignments, which true neutral is almost half, which is the way it should be. 48.14% of all people, of all free-willed races in the world, are true neutral.
That doesn't really make much sense to me.
And then you add on all 4 of the other neutral alignments, and it makes up over 93%. So the 4 extreme alignments are the rarest.
Well, okay, yes, it makes sense that a majority of alignments would be in the middle somewhere. Just true neutral has always felt like the weirdest alignment to me.
Yeah, and it's also just because people really misinterpret what true neutral means. Like, you wouldn't believe how many people think that true neutral means that you go out of your way to maintain the balance between law, evil, chaos, and good. Like, your character actually thinks that for every good deed they do, they have to go out and do an evil deed. That's what people think neutral means.
I was always under the interpretation that true neutral was something that was really only reserved for very specific people. Like, for example, like hermit monks might be true neutral as they like absolve themselves almost entirely from society as a whole.
That would make them chaotic, though.
Would it?
Yeah, by the rules, by the description of what chaos means. They don't live in society.
But they don't stand for like anything chaotic either.
Neither do the slutty.
I suppose
They just are.
Okay, so how do we interpret and describe just neutrality then?
Neutrality?
Yeah.
Neutrality is just not going one way or the other.
Just making your own calls, basically?
Pretty much.
Okay.
I mean, the idea is that the majority of people are neutral. And I've always felt the same way about real life.
I mean, I guess if we go back to our thing about peasants, right? Like, yeah, they don't give a fuck. They just want gold. They just want to live. They want to have a good life.
Oh yeah, and just throwing this out there, just in case anybody out there thinks that alignment is permanent and can't be changed.
Oh, yeah.
If that were true, devils wouldn't be able to tempt anyone.
But also, that's a stupid argument to have anyway. The DMG immediately gets rid of any questions about that. If you start acting outside your alignment, the DM is perfectly allowed to, change it over time. Yeah.
But it still doesn't even fucking matter because there is almost no mechanics in the game that relate to your alignment.
It does matter if you're Paladin.
Actually, no, it doesn't. Because in 5th edition, alignment has nothing to do with your Paladin powers. It's your oath. You have a list of tenets that you have to follow.
Yes, because your power... See, that's the thing. That's a misinterpretation. Not about that, but about Paladins. A lot of people think that the powers from a Paladin come from their god. That's incorrect. The power comes from their oath. Like, their like, it could be like a marriage proposal or their belief in this particular individual, like a samurai with a lord. That's where their power comes from. It's not because a god grants it to them. It's not like a cleric.
Or a book and its author.
Right. Which is so funny to think about. You're like, I believe this so hard, and
that it's giving me divine powers.
Yeah,
which is stupid.
So I do prefer if it was just like, I do prefer the idea that not Templars, freaking Paladins are just more battle-focused clerics. I prefer that idea better.
That's literally all they are.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably put all of the classes on their own little, like, axis chart. Like, what is a ranger? That's like a mixture of fighter and druid.
Mm-hmm.
A cleric. What is that a mixture of? I mean, I guess also fighter and druid, just with different armor proficiencies and different spells.
But for as dumb as the whole oath thing is in 5th edition, for what do I keep saying Templars? For Paladins, damn. I am a big fan of weird classes like that like get their powers out of non-divine or non-magical means. That's one of the reasons why, despite 4th edition's flaws, I love the Warlord. I love the idea of a Warlord just saying you're okay and you actually gain HP from it. Like, that's so ridiculous.
Oh, that's because it's not really magical in that case, though. It's just he's so charismatic that he's able to heal people, or rather help them heal themselves by talking to them.
Well, and also that can go into another conversation we can have, too, in regards of the actual power of charisma. and what charisma really is.
And paladins are charisma-based casters.
Right. Because charisma, more or less, is... Again, I brought this up earlier in conversation today, how there's a game, Matt Mercer's new RPG coming out. What did I say it was called?
Ravenwood?
Not Ravenwood.
No.
It was Ravenheart. Called Ravenheart. Renamed charisma to presence, which makes so much more sense to me, because that's really what charisma is. Like when you're being sucked into a portal by a being against your will, what save do you make?
A charisma save.
You make a charisma save, because charisma is your spot in the world.
But do you know why it's like that in D&D?
Go ahead, explain.
Okay, it's because, as I have already explained, all of the outer planes are trying to sap your free will from you. Like, going to any of the lower planes, most of them have an effect that you have to make saves in order to avoid having your alignment change to evil. Elysium does the same thing. Elysium is a good aligned plane that can brainwash anybody who visits it into being happy and never wanting to leave. Mechanus, I think, also does something similar.
Yes, it makes you more neutral the longer you stay there.
More lawful.
More lawful, yeah, the longer you stay there.
Yeah, so they sap your free will. So anything that would teleport you to a place that's going to change your personality, represented by your charisma, is, yeah, you have to be able to defend against that. So really, what charisma is the force of your alignment energies.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It's the more charisma you have, the more energies that make up your alignment fill your being.
So what does that mean for people with lower charisma?
It means that they are more easily corrupted by
Outside forces?
The alignment energies of the Omniverse.
Okay.
I'm not going to say easily corrupted in general, because I still think domination magic is a wisdom save.
But we're specifically talking about the corruption of outer planes on mortal beings.
But domination magic affects your brain,
right?
Not your soul.
Yeah, your brain's different,
yes.
separate.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which leads me into the two original settings that I created. One of which is the setting of my manga series Wapai, which, if you're over 18, you can read it on my Pixiv and on E621. But alignment exists in that world, and it also exists in another original tabletop RPG setting that I'm making called Aluja. Both worlds have just the same three alignments: good, neutral, and evil. And neutral, the vast majority of people are neutral, even more so than in D&D. Like, over 80% of people are neutral, and less than 10% of people are good or evil. And the reason why is because if you are evil, you know it. You know that you're a selfish bastard who is only out for himself or out in the pursuit of greater evil. And if you are good, then you are actively making efforts to make the world better and be a good person. And there's also mechanics tied to these alignments, these really rare alignments, pros and cons. There are two elements, holy and dark, that can only be used by good and evil people. And they also take double damage from the opposing element. So if you want to be a good aligned paladin who has sworn your life to fighting evil, whoever it is, then you will be granted this holy power specifically with which to smite evil. But you're also making yourself vulnerable to that same evil. You become weak to their dark powers. And that's the way it works basically in both settings. The only difference between the two settings is that neutral characters cannot be paladins. Neutral characters can be priests, they can worship any of the 9 gods, but paladins have to be good or evil, or else they're not going to get their holy and dark elemental powers. That's just the way that I use alignment. It's different from the way D&D does alignment because it's a different setting. But D&D has an alignment system, in its core rules, and Wizards of the Coast is trying to write them out, and it's like taking out the bottom Jenga piece of a tower. It's just going to collapse, and then the world isn't going to make sense anymore.
I mean, it barely makes sense as it is. But
it used to make more sense.
But I do think it is important that D&D keeps its core together. I think that if they try and change it too much, again, much like what happened with 4th edition, people are just going to fight it.
Speaking of Wizards of the Coast changing core aspects of D&D, now we get to move into our second topic, which is what they're doing with 1D&D. They are changing the word race to species.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard that, I was severely pissed off for several reasons. One is that no one has ever complained about the word race being used in other settings. Final Fantasy uses it, the Elder Scrolls uses it. Nobody ever complained about it there, as far as I know. It's just because it's a tabletop RPG. It's Dungeons and Dragons, and these are people's personas that they're making for themselves and controlling. They don't want race involved in their perfect little world where they get to be a pretend elf and cast butterfly spells. They don't want the word race involved because they think that the word race is immoral.
Yeah, do I really think that a majority of people think that way? No. I do not believe that's the case.
I think it's just a lot of loud Twitter SJWs that Wizards of the Coast paid way too much attention to.
I think that is part of it. But obviously there was a minority of people that do have some issues with it. And I think it's not really so much the players as them being fearful of people overhearing a conversation at a game table, and they're talking about what kind of race do you want to be? And, someone coming in who's, whatever, and getting upset about that. I think that's kind of the origin of this whole thing in the first place. Because if there wasn't some sort of backing to this with the term race, then Pathfinder would have never changed their race title either.
Yeah, but also, apart from that, they're also trying to, at least I assume this is what they're trying to do, by eliminating the word race and the concept of races from your world, you also eliminate racism. Except now, the characters in the world have a better excuse to be prejudiced.
Right.
Because they're not racist anymore if they want to murder all the drow.
Right, yeah. Because they're species now. Yeah, they're as different from us as deer, are to humans, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And
like, I hate those drow with their black skin and their white hair and their obsession with spiders and the fact that they all live underground and worship gods that I don't worship.
Right. And
then some other guy that they're talking to is like, yeah, I feel the exact same way about kangaroos. They should just all die. Because they're not another race anymore. They're not people anymore. They're another species.
Now, again, going back to, because I've heard some conversations about this, going back into older D&D, 1E Advanced, Gary did make it fairly clear that these other races are supposed to be very different from each other physically. But I don't think the intention was ever supposed to be that they were separate species. Because he never used that word for once. He never used that word.
Well, that's where this next little tidbit of information comes into play. Mm-hmm. Because I did mention that this was my initial response to what they were doing with the word. Here it is. Been right under my nose all these years. Page 17 of the Player's Handbook. Humans are the most common people in the worlds of D&D, but they live and work alongside dwarves, elves, halflings, and countless other fantastic species.
Ah. Okay. So even before this, they were still using that term.
Yeah, but they were they were going back and forth between species and race and treating them as one and the same word.
Okay.
So then what does humanoid mean? It's just type in terms of the game rules? And they're also getting rid of the word subrace too. They're changing it to like lineage or something.
Right.
Really? It actually doesn't matter in this case. I mean, if they were already using species and race as meaning the same exact thing as synonyms, that means nobody can complain when I keep calling them races.
Well, that's another thing from online communities that I've seen. Biggest one, Reddit. Reddit's always good to check Reddit. Everyone is kind of in agreement that, like, who cares? Like, you're still going to call them it's the Dark Souls issue where there's still bonfires.
There's still Estus flasks.
Yeah.
There's no souls.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, they're still going to call it race. It's not going to change. It's just too ubiquitous to the hobby as a whole.
And not just D&D, like I mentioned. Final Fantasy and the Elder Scrolls both use race. Mm-hmm. Every fantasy setting uses the word race.
Yeah, I don't know of any that don't. But this is a small issue on my part too. I don't like species, not because of this whole online argument and blah, blah, blah and all this stuff. I don't like species because I don't think it fits thematically term-wise.
It's too scientific of a term.
Right.
It would be like if there were biologists in D&D. Or like microchemists or whatever. Like, they don't talk about molecules in D&D's lore. Because they probably don't even know what molecules are. They might talk about it in flavor text, like you get blasted by a thunder wave and exploded into billions of tiny molecules, but the characters aren't going to know that word.
No. Again, they don't need to know that. I mean, in a high magic setting like this, who gives a shit? You're going to cast Fireball regardless. Yeah, so that's my only real stay in that. Do I know an alternative that would work better? I think Pathfinder does fine with lineages and backgrounds, which is fine. I don't understand why we even need to worry about this question anymore. Just whatever. Who cares?
I mean, and not to sound like a hypocrite, but well, actually, I'm not a hypocrite. No, because Wapayi, of the two settings that I mentioned before, Wapayi still uses race, but Aluja doesn't, because there is only one sapient race. And everyone in it is a biological, unique enigma. Mm-hmm. And I just call them sapients. Mm-hmm. That is the only official term to refer to them because everybody is unique. Like, that skeleton over there with the arm made of ooze, yeah, he's related to that gargantuan dragon lady with the 6 arms and the feet made of fire. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're all related. Everyone with a free will is playable. The entire game is based around NPCs being built exactly the same, kind of like what 3.5 does, mm-hmm. which I think is a wonderful selling point of 3.5. And the only other species in the world besides sapients are regular animals, which they just call beasts. So there are only 3 types of beings. The gods, sapients, and beasts. And that's it. Super simple.
Also, for anybody who has not played 3.5, we haven't played much of it, but anyone who's only played 5th edition is afraid of getting into 3.5, I can tell you one thing that might actually convince you to play it. You can be a dragon.
You can play as a dragon. There were rules for it. There were rules for playing as lots of races. In fact, we played a short adventure where he was a troglodyte. Mm-hmm. A troglodyte cleric of Lyangzed. And I'm going to be recapping that adventure too. Right. I got a lot of recaps that I want.
But that is one of the best things that 3.5 ever did. And I have no idea why 5th edition just didn't follow in its footsteps with that.
I mean, actually, there are racial traits for troglodytes, but they're in the Dungeon Master's Guide restricted to NPCs. But then again, it also has racial traits for skeletons and zombies. Can you imagine playing as one of those?
I could see playing as a skeleton.
But you wouldn't have free will.
Well, I mean, it's very easy to give yourself free will as a skeleton, though. You give any sort of specific circumstance for it.
I guess.
I mean, there's nothing stopping you, yeah.
I mean, it is a tabletop RPG. I can do whatever I want with it.
Right.
Just like I got rid of Electrum.
Money's already a pain in the ass to keep track of anyway. And that's coming from a group that plays with freaking, what do they call that? Cubeventory. We play with Cubeventory. Yeah, I guess half of you guys wouldn't even try that. It's fun, though, by the way. It's really fun.
Yes, it's good and it's effective, and I found a way to convert it to 3.5 with its stupid carry capacity math system.
Yeah, well, you can put a link to the video for Cubeventory. I'm sure.
Oh, I absolutely will, because I've also got a very highly rated comment on there with lots of replies explaining how we convert it into a paper and pencil format, and how to track coins easily too. But yeah, so those two topics. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
Maybe just some small things. I mean, in my okay, so you've been doing that. In my free time, I've been preparing for a future game that I'm going to be running. I'm very fascinated with old D&D. So I found these prints of they're called Original Adventures Reincarnated by Gooden Games. These are adventures. There's 6 volumes right now that follow the first 6 adventures for basic D&D. Back when it was printed. And these have 5th edition conversions, along with artwork, interviews. They're huge, massive tomes of information.
Yeah, they include the entirety of the original modules, plus a complete 5th edition conversion with unique rules for the enemies that haven't been brought back to 5th edition yet, and magic items.
This book has rules for Sticks to Snakes, and I love that. Sticks to Snakes is one of my favorite spells from the series, and I'm so glad it's here. I love it. It also has information about races that are no longer even talked about anymore. Like there's these spider monkey guys that can glide with their like skin flaps. They're in here. I forget what they're called though. One of my favorite things I like about this is Isle of Dread. I'm going to be running Into the Borderlands, which is a generic sort of starter DM game, but specifically I'm reading this one right now, which is basic D&D. When I say basic D&D, by the way, for those of you who don't know. Back in the day, in 1E, there was two releases. There was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, 1st edition, and Basic. Advanced was just considered a little too advanced for people, so they made Basic, where they combined races and classes. So you couldn't play as a dwarf cleric; you were just a dwarf or an elf. And it took place in a separate world called Mystara, and it was just meant to be an introduction game. It went from levels 1 to 14, I believe. They never actually finished printing the books to get to level 20, is what I'm trying to say. But
I thought they took place in Greyhawk.
Basic didn't.
Oh.
Basic took place in Mystara. Advanced took place in Greyhawk. There's actually a map right here. There is a map included in here. It's a little hard to see on camera. I don't know if we'll be able to get a scan of that or not. But this is actually it's not listed on here, but this is the map of Mystara. And you can actually see in here, like the actual adventure. The adventure in this book takes place down here, this little island. Everything else in here is
just the rest of the setting.
Is just for context. That's all it's there for. In fact, Into the Borderlands, the first story, takes place in this little tiny place right here, just south. It's the Altep Mountains right here. But that's what I mean. Like, this is Mystara. That's what this is.
And have you ever heard of the arcade game Chronicles of Mystara? It's a 2D brawler, side-scrolling brawler. Is that what you call it?
Mm-hmm.
You beat 'em up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that takes place in Mystara.
Mm-hmm. Right. But specifically, I want to bring up this book because in the very back, in the new stuff they included, they have some rules for new weapons. It's very small, but they have one here that I really like, and I think this should be officially supported because I like it. They have the War Boomerang, which it does 1d6 slashing and has a special property.
Slashing?
Yeah, it's slashing because it's bladed.
It's bladed, okay.
It's bladed, yeah. So it does. Okay, it does have the thrown property, not ranged. So,
but there are thrown melee and ranged weapons.
Well,
so
this is
which is it?
It's just thrown.
Martial ranged weapon.
Sorry.
So it's ranged thrown.
Ranged thrown. What's cool about it, though, and what I like about it is you throw it, it's got a range increment of 25, 100. If you miss the target, it comes back to you. But to catch it, you have to use your reaction, which is fantastic balancing. I love how simple that is. It makes perfect sense. Love it.
Yeah, so if you want a weapon that comes back to you, you have to give up your reaction in order to do it. and that means you don't get opportunity attacks.
Another thing this book includes is the Otlotl, which a lot of people don't even know about. Do you know what an Otlotl is?
I do know what it is. It's like this little wooden hook thing that you stick a javelin in and it helps you throw it further.
Yeah, it's so cool. It adds 10 to the range increment of javelins. I'm like, that's phenomenal. I love that. It's so simple. Again, these should be official. These should totally be official. What else do they have? They include the cutlass, which is considered a finesse weapon, 1d8 slashing.
Isn't that just it's D8?
Yeah, D8 slashing.
That's weird. Why does it do more than a scimitar?
Because it's different. And they also have the war claws, which are, you have the hands and the claws that come out of your fingers.
Wait a minute.
What is it?
That thing's worth 15 gold, right?
Yes.
How much does it weigh?
5 pounds.
Okay, so it weighs more. The scimitar costs 25 gold. It only does a D6 slashing. And what are those things? What is its properties?
Finesse.
Just finesse?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the scimitar is finesse and light.
Yep,
so it's easier to dual wield them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't dual wield cutlasses.
No. Well, they were never meant to be dual wielded.
Rip anyone wanting to make Vice from Skies of Arcadia, then. Or Cervantes from Soul Calibur.
Right. But yes, also, like I said, war claws, which do have the finesse and light property. 25 gold, pretty expensive, and they do a d6. But they're just like a melee,
What are the properties?
Finesse and light.
So you can dual wield them.
Yes, they're meant to be dual wielded.
Okay.
And lastly on here is the Macana, which again, pretty rare. You don't see the Macana in many places.
I'm not familiar with that.
Also known as the Makuhuitl.
I have heard that word.
Yes.
What is that?
The Makuhuitl is a wooden board with pieces of flint or obsidian attached to the outside rim of the blade to cause severe, and I'm talking severe slashing damage. But the problem is that they're incredibly fragile. Like you'd usually slash it and then it would just break apart. Now they don't have that fragility here in its stats, but it is a 1d6 slashing weapon because they say here they use like teeth, like shark teeth for it. It weighs 3 pounds and has the versatile property, 1d8.
Seems really powerful for only costing 2 gold.
Well, I mean, again, it's just wood. It's just wood and teeth. It's mostly used by ogres.
Yeah, I'm just saying it should...
That's the one I feel less about. Like, that one is definitely something I don't feel as good about compared to the rest.
Maybe it should weigh more? Or not be a simple weapon? Well, if it's made of wood and teeth, it's gotta be.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is just one of those instances where... the story is trumping gameplay.
I thought when I saw it, I thought it was saying, machina. I was like, what magic? like magic machinery? It's like, no, it's a machina.
Machina isn't even spelled that way.
I know. And the last thing it includes is 2 new armors, which are wicker armor and bone armor. Bone gives you 14 armor class, period. Both grant disadvantage. Wicker gives you 11 plus dex with a max of 1. So,
Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. They're both listed as medium armor, but neither of them follow the medium armor rules.
Yeah, again, I don't feel as good about that one. Definitely not. But again, Otlotl, War Boomerang, War Claws, Cutlass, Grid. I like those ones. But yeah, anyway, I do highly recommend anybody who's interested in these books to pick them up. They're great looks into the past. They include both the 5th edition revisions of the stories, including with their own keying of the events, as well as the full prints of the original.
Yeah, I did mention that.
Oh yeah, but you get what I'm trying to say. And not only just the basic one, also the advanced reprints are in here too. And also the Temple of Elemental Evil one. It's big.
It's 2 of those books.
It's 2 of these.
Comes in a box set.
They added a whole other layer to the Temple of Evil. They turned it into a mega dungeon. It's fucking crazy. Well, okay, not a traditional mega dungeon, but, it's big.
A big dungeon, yeah.
Yes.
Isn't it a mega dungeon, though? Doesn't it take you all the way up to level 20?
I believe Elemental Evil is from 15 to 20. So...
15 to 20?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's still a high-level adventure.
Right.
Just doesn't take you from 1 to 20.
No.
Okay. That's still fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we've never played a character that high of a level.
No.
I'm looking forward to that. Can we play that after Borderlands? instead of Isle of Dread?
Oh, I mean, I wasn't really gonna run Isle of Dread anyway. To be honest, as cool as Isle of Dread is, I love this artwork, by the way. As cool as Isle of Dread is, it is just a wilderness crawl. Like, walk here. What do you see? Oh, it's a cave of baboons, and you find some gold. It's really a lot of that. There is a story in here about search, and I will say this: Into the Borderlands kind of sucks for story. There's pretty much no story here. It's just
there's no goal. It's a dungeon.
Go to either you choose to go to the Sanctuary of Zelagar and Ragan, or you go to the Caves of Chaos, and that's it. It's just go there, kill shit, whatever.
Can we go to both?
Do you want to go to both?
I mean, why not just make it so that, like, there's this plague in the main town that can only be cured by the two halves of some ancient relic, and each half is in each dungeon.
Oh yeah, I mean we could do that.
We just have to go find them.
Right.
Well, a fetch quest.
But again, they're both really huge, so let's try not to go through everything.
I mean, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can do that, and this is a little bit better because at least at the very beginning, it actually gives you a player handout that you guys find a hidden message from an ancient adventurer, who existed like 30 years ago. I guess I shouldn't say ancient, an old adventurer looking for a magical black pearl located on the Isle of Dread, which only appears every couple of years because the Isle of Dread is actually an island from the elemental plane of water. And it actually temporarily appears and disappears in other realms and stuff. So very interesting stuff. That's a lot better than no story. I'll tell you that much. There's also a lot more friendly NPCs in Isle of Dread too. At least gnomes aren't just evil. I do hate that. I do hate how the first one makes it just so gnomes are just kind of bad people. Never liked them gnomes.
Is it that they were evil, or is it that they were chaotic? Because they're known for being pranksters.
Yeah, they are. I guess they are just chaotic, I guess. Yeah. But they're definitely not chaotic good. I can tell you that much, though. Because they're very selfish.
That's arguable. But at least modern gnomes.
No, I'm not talking about modern gnomes. I'm talking about D&D depictions of gnomes. I guess I should say D&D basic depictions of gnomes.
All right, so there's one more topic that I want to talk about. Just a bonus little thing. It's not really a grand discussion. It's a character build that I came up with. It's not for everybody. It's very specific. It's not even really a build. It's just a way to build the concept. Are you familiar with John Henry from American folklore? If you're not familiar, I'll explain it. John Henry was probably real. He was a black man who was supposedly born during the night of a thunderstorm, already fully grown. He was 12 foot tall and 4 feet wide, and he was enormous and very strong. He didn't have an education growing up, but he went to work on the railroad, driving spikes into the railroad in order to build it, along with other workers. And then one day, some guy comes along, some tinker or machinist or whatever, and he has this machine that can do the work for them. And faster. It builds the railroad automatically, and it's going to put them all out of a job. John Henry, hearing that his co-workers are, worried about losing their livelihoods, decides that he's going to stand up to the machine. He challenges the creator of the machine to a race to see who can build the railroad the fastest. And his co-workers are like, "You can't beat that thing. It's a machine." To which he replies, "Ain't nothing a machine can do that a man can't do, so long as a man has a mind to do it." So he challenges the machine to a race. He's dual-wielding sledgehammers so that he can pound the spikes into the rail as he goes. He sees that it's starting to beat him, and he hears his co-workers lamenting about how they're going to lose their jobs and their livelihoods, and it inspires him to go faster. He doesn't care how tired he gets. He doesn't care how weak or hurt he gets. He just goes, and he just barely manages to beat the machine. He saves their jobs, as per their agreement, but then he dies of exhaustion. And that's how he became a legend. I built him in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. And this can only work in 5th edition, as far as I know. It doesn't work in 3.5 or 4th edition. It also won't work in 1D&D. It can only work in vanilla 5e. Okay, so first, you play a variant human, and you take the dual wielder feat. Then, for your first level, Ranger. And it's important that your first level is Ranger because we're going to be dumping Wisdom. And you need 13 Wisdom in order to multi-class into Ranger, but not to start as it. Which, personally, I think that there should be some more prerequisites for ability scores for your starting class, but there isn't in 5th edition. So you pick Ranger first, and you take Favored Enemy Construct, so that you're good at defeating robots and machines. Just like he was. Alright, then you have to make sure that your physical ability scores are all high. Strength, Dex, and Con. Dump Int, because he didn't have an education. Dump Wisdom, because it was stupid of him to agree to that contest in the first place, and he doesn't have much of a survival instinct. And keep Charisma at least 10, since he does have some leadership qualities. Second level, you're going to take Fighter, so that you can get Second Wind, which is always going to be just 1d10 plus 1, because we're not taking any more levels in Fighter after this. But what you really want is the 2-weapon fighting style. And the reason we didn't just take a second level of Ranger to get that is because that would give him magic. And we don't want him to be magic. So 1 level of Ranger for Favored Enemy Construct, then 1 level of Fighter for 2-weapon fighting. So now you've got that and Dual Wielder, which means you can now dual wield Warhammers. You've got a D8 weapon in each hand with probably at least 16 strength. You're dealing 2d8 plus 6 damage per turn, assuming both attacks hit. That's an average of 15 damage per round, and that's before getting extra attack from our third class, which we'll be taking levels in from this point forward, Barbarian. Barbarian gets unarmored defense, and every depiction of John Henry depicts him as not wearing a shirt. So, unarmored defense. That's why he needs high dex and high con. He'll also get extra attack later on, as well as brutal critical. And he'll also get reckless attack, which just lets him have advantage on all of his attacks for a round. So, not only are you going to be having advantage on both of your attacks, that's 4 dice, but then you'll also have extra attack, which lets you have 1 extra Warhammer attack. That's a total of 6 dice in a turn, sextupling your chances of getting a crit. And then you'll also have brutal critical, which lets you deal even more damage on crits. So he'll be a powerhouse. But the main reason that we're taking Barbarian is to get him the one thing that completes the character. And this is why it's not a recommended build. This only suits John Henry. John Henry's story is the only reason we're doing this. We are taking the path of the Berserker. And now, even the positive benefit that you get from playing a Berserker and using Frenzy doesn't work for John Henry because he's already dual wielding. Frenzy lets you make a second attack as a bonus action on your turn, but he's already doing that because he's dual wielding and he has the feats and the fighting style to do it.
But wouldn't he take less of a penalty?
No, because the fighting style and the feat make it so that he's using his he's got his strength modifier to both attacks.
Ah, okay.
And he can dual wield them even though they aren't light weapons.
Got it.
Yeah, so that's what those feats are for. And they changed the dual wielder feat. Either that or the 2-weapon fighting style in 1D&D, which is why it doesn't work in that. So you need those 2 things, the 2-weapon fighting style and dual wielder, in order to be dual wielding Warhammers in the first place. But then, since you can't really benefit from Frenzy, the only reason we're doing this is so that he can kill himself of exhaustion.
That doesn't sound like a very good character trait to have. I built this character just to die from exhaustion.
But if you want to really play up the idea of John Henry, only use frenzy when fighting constructs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which hopefully your DM will put constructs in the game because you took favorite enemy constructs.
I think any DM worth their salt's going to do that. I think. It is just really funny. Like, he just gets so mad whenever he sees a machine. He's like, oh, that coffee maker. Oh, I can make my own coffee, damn it.
Just smash. Printing press? Watch how fast I write. I don't care if I had to take 3 levels of exhaustion to do it. I will finish this book by sundown.
But that is one of the reasons why John Henry is such a phenomenal story, though. I mean,
he's my favorite folklore character.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Great character. Always loved him. Always.
Yeah, but that's all. I just wanted to share that little build with you. That is all for today's VOIDCAST. We're definitely going to be doing more of this in the future, as soon as we can come up with more topics to discuss.
Oh, I'm sure we will. I mean, I'm always researching more things. You're always looking at more stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So this gives me a great opportunity to like dump all that information on somebody.
Maybe you can help me recap some of the adventures that you ran, like the Old Family Inn and Phineas Jail.
I could try. I mean, they're a bit, rough now in my memory, but we can try.
Well,
sure.
They are for me too. We'd have to look at some of the stuff.
We could always use some of this casting, the VOIDCAST, to go over them with each other. Of course, we can always do that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you all so very much for watching. Until next time, we'll be here in the darkness, quietly awaiting your return.